There are probably two things that you have heard multiple times before if you have looked into car camping or the camping world in general. One, that Florida's full, especially this time of year. And or two, it is impossible to do van life or car camping in Florida or on the East Coast in general, especially this time of year. And I am here today to tell you that not only is it not impossible, but in this video, I am going to be giving you 10 safe alternatives for overnight parking to paid campgrounds. Let's get right into it, shall we? I'm Heather. Welcome back to my channel, Heather's Hikes and Adventures. And because I wanted to be motivational today, I am wearing my trash can, not trash can't shirt. But like I said, I want to give you 10 alternatives to a safe overnight parking spot aside from paid campgrounds, especially here in Florida, because I know, like I said, that it can be a challenge. And make sure that you stay tuned all the way till the end, because not only am I going to be giving you 10 pretty surefire bets when it comes to overnight parking, but I'm going to throw in a few bonus ones that are good backups to have as well. So let's get right into it, shall we? All right, diving right in, the first thing I want to discuss today is our alternative to BLM or kind of public lands camping that you would expect to see out west. Here in Florida, we have water management districts, wildlife management areas instead. And a lot of times you can find some really awesome free camping spots. They do require an online reservation. In fact, I've done a video before walking you through the steps on how to go about that, but it gives you access to a gated code that's required to get into those free campgrounds. And then once you're in there, it's dispersed camping. You just kind of choose your spot that you want to set up at. But they are great, like I said, great alternatives to paid campgrounds. I've stayed at quite a few already, and I have quite a few more here in Florida that I want to stay at. I will link my playlist below if you want to look into any of the ones that I have checked out so far. But let's move along. Number two, we are still in the camping realm versus kind of just an overnight parking spot type thing. And that is our version of dispersed camping in national forests here in Florida. We do have the main national forests that people would do dispersed camping in would be the Ocala National Forest, kind of in north central Florida, Apalachicola National Forest, kind of in the Big Bend area or the Panhandle, and Osceola National Forest. Those aren't the only options, but that's kind of where most of the dispersed camping, if you're looking into places to go, where you'll find it. Now, there are established campgrounds in those national forests. For example, I've stayed at a couple in Ocala National Forest before that are paid campgrounds. That is a completely different thing. The main thing you want to pay attention to, especially here in Florida at least, are the hunting seasons, because there are certain rules and regulations around where you can camp and what times of year. Certain areas are off limits during hunting season and so forth. So just make sure you do your due diligence if you are looking into that. I will leave a link in the description below for the Florida National Forest site that can give you specific information on each one and how to go about figuring out where and how to disperse camp there. The next thing that I want to discuss are 24-hour fishing piers and or boat launches and boat ramps. There are tons of those to choose from here in Florida, and for the most part, you are able to park at them 24 hours. So they are a good overnight option, and most of them are obviously right on the water, so you'll have a nice view and be in a nice scenic spot for the most part. And they will be, for the most part, again, free. Now, I have stayed at one, which is actually, fun fact, the world's largest fishing pier here in Florida on the Gulf Coast, the Skyway, the South Skyway Fishing Pier. And I will link a video below for that as well if you want to see more on that. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just put the playlists below for all of the kind of free camping spots or overnight parking I've done. as well as the actual free camping spots, that playlist that I've done for like the water management district. So you want to check any of those out. They will be linked below. But like I said, there are tons here on the coasts all over Florida. So check into it, make sure there's no specific signage saying, you know, fishing license required here or that you need a parking permit. But most of them will allow you to park there overnight, free of charge. So they're a great option. Next up is one that I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of. It's my personal go-to, kind of my number two option, if you will, or my kind of always plan B, no matter where I am. And that is Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrels are awesome. Everyone I've stayed at so far is quiet. It's in a convenient area that feels safe, well lit. It's usually right off the highway, right near hotels, gas stations, truck stops, things like that. So it's easy on, easy off the highway if you're traveling. Perfect spot to slide in for the night. Either grab a dinner before you go to bed, grab a hot breakfast before you hit the road, or, you know, if you want to pull in really late and leave really early, whatever the case may be, I have always found it to be a welcoming, safe, good overnight option. And a bonus is, of course, that it's free, although it is always good to patronize the establishment if you are looking for a meal or if you want to run into their gift shop and check out what they have. And they have, you know, bathrooms, which is a bonus too. All right, let's move on. I love loves. I'm just going to say that. Personally, for me, loves are the only truck stops that I've slept at so far. But for the most part, most truck stops and welcome, I think they call them travel centers now, the larger ones, are going to be good options to overnight for free in a safe, well-lit place. Of course, you're going to want to make sure you're not taking up the truck parking and that you're going to want to be on the car parking side. You're going to want to make sure you don't park right in front of the business at the, you know, the very first front spots that are going to be the most desirable for the paying customers coming in and out quickly. But there's usually plenty of parking, and with a few exceptions that I've heard of here that are starting to enforce like a 1 hour time limit, most truck stops are still going to be a safe bet for you when it comes to a safe spot to overnight. An option that sometimes people don't think about but is usually a safe bet is going to be home improvement stores like Lowe's or Home Depot. They normally have huge parking lots. You can normally find a spot that's kind of out of the way, still well lit, and for the most part, they do not restrict overnight parking. Again, double check the specific spot you're at to make sure that there are no signs and no recent changes. But I have never heard of any issues with Home Depot or Lowe's in the general areas that I've been around in Florida. And they're normally in pretty convenient locations as well that are right next to, again, gas stations. You've got the restroom inside during business hours. And then you're normally pretty close to a major road or highway. Similar to home improvement stores are going to be sporting goods stores. Dick's Sporting Good, Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops. Again, those places typically overnight parking friendly, including RVs, and they normally have very big parking lots. And again, very convenient to run in there when businesses are open to pick up any camping things you might need, you know, fuel, anything you might have forgotten on your trip, or resupplies, backpacking meals, those types of things. And easy in, easy out, safe, well lit. You see the theme. Next on the list is going to be hospital parking lots. Now, this is going to be one that you're going to want to use your discretion with. Obviously, the last thing you want to do is take parking away from people that need the hospital, whether it's the emergency room, whether it's a family member or friend coming to visit a loved one that's in the hospital. So, if you notice that parking is at a premium at the specific hospital you're looking at or scouting, if you notice that, maybe there might be an issue with that, or that it might be a very high traffic spot where those spots are going to be needed for, actual hospital use, obviously do not park there. But there are, for example, I can think of 2 hospitals not too far from my home base. One of them I know is typically harder to get parking at from personal experience. So I would personally not choose that one, whereas the other one that I'm thinking of almost always has tons of available parking right near the emergency room. So it's in a good spot still. And let's face it, with my personal health challenges at the moment, it's not a bad idea to know where the nearby hospitals are and have that as a backup option to sleep at. But those are good, well patrolled normally, safe, well lit. Obviously, we'll have 24-hour in and out. So it is a good option as long as, again, you're using your discretion at whether that specific location is an ideal one for you or not. Another one that I don't hear a lot about, but that is a very good option, and I have gotten very good feedback from others on as well, are park and rides, the 24-hour ones. For example, here in Florida with Sunrail, there are lots of 24-hour lots where people will park their car, commute to a different spot for a work trip or during the week, leave their car at that lot, and then do their thing and come back a day or 2 later, get their car and go. So logic would hold. It is a good 24-hour parking spot area. Again, this may not hold true for every single lot. I don't want to be a broken record, but do kind of exercise your due diligence, common sense when it comes to that area and check it out. But for the most part, like the Lynx bus systems that have the park and rides where you can park overnight or park for 24 hours or whatever the case may be, leave your car and get on the bus or get on the train, those are excellent spots to park overnight. They're usually very quiet during non-work hours and rush hour times, and easy in, easy out. You can be on your way the next morning, no problem. We are now at number 10, and that is going to be one that's a little more controversial for Florida. I do want to give the disclaimer that legally in Florida, the rest stop max is 3-hour parking, but it's a great spot if you do need to stop for a few hours. I've utilized them for naps lots of times, and depending on if you're not in a super touristy, busy rest stop area or one that's like right on the coast in a spot where there's a lot of people trying to overnight with not a lot of options, for the most part, the rest stops are a good place to overnight using your discretion. You've got restrooms, sometimes you have security patrolling, and depending on your stealth factor and when you're arriving and leaving, they're a great overnight option. Quiet, safe, and right on the highway, so they don't really detour you if you're traveling and need to get back on the road in a hurry. All right, before I wrap this up, I do want to mention a few bonus options. They're ones I chose not to include in the main list because they are a little more dependent on the specific region or area or establishment, and so they're not something that you can maybe necessarily rely on big picture. But if you are more familiar with the areas, or if you're very stealthy, they may be great and even preferred options for you. So let's talk about those. A lot of people love utilizing hotel parking lots, especially if they're going to be arriving somewhere late and leaving early and just need a spot to sleep before moving on. Again, touristy areas, especially like downtown and big cities, Orlando, Miami, Tampa, those kind of areas, beach areas, coastal towns, resort towns, I would not recommend, because most of those hotels do now require parking passes, and they are patrolling for cars that are parking there without actually utilizing that establishment, whether you're staying overnight or attending an event there, whatever the case may be. So I wouldn't recommend that necessarily all of the time, but I do know plenty of people that love hotel parking lots. Again, it kind of just depends on your personal situation and the specific area, but I did want to mention that. Another option that a lot of people actually prefer to parking lots is street, specifically residential street parking overnight. And again, a lot of times the general etiquette for overnight parking would apply. You arrive late, you leave early, you don't want to stand out in any negative way. You obviously wouldn't want to pull up and park right in front of somebody's driveway, directly in front of their home, especially if there's no other cars parking on the street there. You don't want to use an HOA neighborhood where you would stick out like a sore thumb. But there are plenty of residential areas, plenty of spots where there is consistent street parking, and it could be a quiet, safe, well-lit option. Things you want to look out for is kind of crime in the area, convenience to things like gas stations or places that you might need to go first or after to kind of do your nighttime or first early morning routine, so that you're not standing out in the middle of other people's homes when they're starting to stir in the morning or before they're settling down for the night. Just things to consider. But again, I know a lot of people that prefer that to parking lots and other places. Also didn't want to do an overnight parking video without mentioning Walmart, but I did not include it in the main list because even though it is still an available option, in a lot of places, more and more Walmarts are cracking down and no longer allowing overnight parking and strictly enforcing it. So you're going to want to be familiar with that specific Walmart. When in doubt, ask or be super stealthy. And it wouldn't be my personal choice anyways, just because of the typical commotion that you hear about and more likelihood to get a less peaceful night's sleep over something like a Cracker Barrel or Home Depot. But again, I just wanted to throw it out there because it is one that people are generally more comfortable with since it is so talked about. And lastly, one more bonus option I just kind of wanted to throw out there for you to kind of marinate on would be, again, more ideal if you're more familiar with the area in general and the specific facility, but a lot of people drop their cars off at car repair and automotive shops overnight if their car is broken down and they're going to need that establishment first thing in the morning when they open. So it's not uncommon to see cars parked overnight there. And so it's not something that would typically stand out usually, especially if it's in a more industrial area and there's just a lot of cars being left overnight. So it is something to think about. Again, it wouldn't be my personal backup choice, for number 1, 2, or even 3, but it is an option that I have heard people have good luck with, and it is something that as a last resort would always be good to have as a backup. And there you have it, folks. 10 great, safe alternatives to paid campgrounds that you can count on having a nice, peaceful overnight experience in your vehicle, whether it's camping or just a quick need a spot to sleep before getting back on the road. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope it gave you some ideas that maybe you hadn't considered before, maybe some extra confidence to get out there and know that you'll be able to find some good spots to sleep so that you can go on your adventures and travel and see the world. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. If you have a favorite that I did not mention, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. I'm sure everybody else watching would appreciate it as well. And I will see you very soon on the next adventure. Bye for now, friends.